In my own life, I was frenzied and I would say pretty insane. And it seemed as if I was insane about the size of my body and my relationship to food, because I zinged up and down the scales by 10 pounds every pretty much week or so for about 17 years. And when I stopped, it was because the suffering was so intense that I didn't want to live like that anymore. And as I say in the book, it's not the case for everybody that intense suffering leads to intense openings.
But often it is the case.
Yes, yes. Suffering seems to be the doorway. I remember reading about that in The Power of Now.
Yes, and often your worst problem is the biggest doorway. What seems to be the biggest obstacle can become the biggest doorway.
Yes, and I think that really is the essence of what my direct experience was, the thing that I most wanted to get rid of, because for a very long time I thought, oh, if I could just have one wish, and it wasn't for world peace, and it wasn't, that the earth be, replenished, it was just, let me wake up thin tomorrow. That was it, Not exactly a magnanimous wish, but nonetheless, that was my, rub the genie lamp and voila, thin. Because I believed that my suffering was because of that. And if only I didn't have that, then I would be happy.
Yes. And then the realization that isn't the case, did that come once and then remained, or did it come in stages that the realization came that that's not it, or was it one realization or several little realizations?
I love that you asked that, because I wanted to ask you a similar question too, but I'll answer that first. For me in my own life, it was that last biggest opening, because I had already planned on how I was going to kill myself. And I had also worked a couple of years before as a suicide prevention and crisis counselor. So I actually knew that, when it got to the point where you had a method and you had a time, then it was really serious.
Yes.
And
of course, it would have been a terrible blow to the people that you counsel about suicide if the counselor commits suicide.
Yes.
It's like my psychiatrist has just been committed to a mental hospital.
Yes, it would have been like that. I feel like that's probably like that when I'm someplace in a restaurant and somebody has read my book. Everybody's watching what I eat. Let's see, is she going to eat too much? Does she binge? Does she eat standing up, sitting down? So it's like that.
They even watch me, they say, why are you drinking coffee and why do you go to Starbucks sometimes?
Yes.
I only drink 1 or 2 cups a day, but yes.
Because of the idea of what it's supposed to look like. Yes, I know when I recommend that people enjoy food, it's startling, and when I reveal that I love chocolate.
Yes.
And anyway, back to your question and my question also. I think I had lost weight so many times, because there was a time, mostly I was overweight during those years, but there was a time when I was anorexic and weighed 82 pounds.
It says somewhere that you lost and put on 1,000 pounds.
Right.
I mean, not all at once.
Yes. Right. Yes. But that's not actually such a hard thing to do for people who are compulsive eaters.
Yeah.
And I had seen, even when I was anorexic, that when I looked in the mirror, I saw fat. So, I often say that when you look at the world through shattered lenses, the world looks shattered.
Yes. I mentioned that also about anorexia, that I think in A New Earth, that instead of seeing your body, you see an image that you have in your mind of your body.
Yes.
And again, it's to be trapped in your mind that really is the problem.
Yes, yes, this ranting mind, as I've come to call it. Yeah. So when that couple days before I was preparing to kill myself, when that stopped, when that opening happened, I never went back. That was a permanent seeing. So I'm going to qualify that in a minute. I've never been on another diet. I've never binged. Although what I now consider a binge is eating when I'm not hungry and not truly listening to what my body wants. So there have been occasionally where I'll eat more than my body wants at that moment. But I never went back to believing that the world, that I would be forever happy if I lost weight, which really meant in that moment that I stopped struggling and I stopped wanting to be somewhere different than I was.
Yes.
I realized, instead of this belief that I have that I'm insane and that this food addiction is what's wrong with me, maybe it's what's right with me, and that I could actually listen to what it's trying to tell me and in some way welcome it instead of fight with it. And I know that you talk about that, about when you stop resisting and fighting and wanting something to go away, space opens up.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
So that became the opening for you, and that's a good example then of the door becomes the opening. What was the obstacle becomes the opening.
That's right, or what I say a lot, what you believe or can sometimes believe is the very worst thing about you is actually the doorway to unexpected joy.
Yes.
And huge joy.
Yes.
Most people don't believe that, particularly about food, because their bodies or their weight, they'll often say to me, but Janine, look at me, I can't walk up the steps, or I'm out of breath, or I really do know if I lost these 30 pounds, my life, I would be the only one in the whole world, but I am the only one in the whole world for whom life would be different. And, I tell them, I got a letter once from somebody from Weight Watchers who said, there was a Weight Watchers ribbon and it was embossed on it, I lost 10 pounds. And she wrote on the bottom of it, and I still feel like crap. And that was, and that was sort of right. The losing weight, it doesn't fix it.
Yes, yes. And of course that applies to almost anything that you told yourself would solve your problems,
yes.
Remove your unhappiness or make you happy, and then you get it, and then you see, it doesn't do what it was supposed to do. So somebody, I don't remember who said it, there are two ways of being unhappy. One is not getting what you want, and the other is getting what you want.
Right. Yes. Right.
And of course that applies as long as you cannot live in acceptance, oneness, alignment with what is, surrender to this moment as it is, then that applies. No matter what you get, it's not going to make you happy.
And I feel like I really tried hard on that one. I call it now the if only I had, fill in the blank, then I would be happy.
Yes.
State of being.
Yes.
And you can fill whatever you want in it. If only I had the body, the relationship, the money, the job, the house,
yes.
the achievement, the accomplishment. It doesn't matter.
Yes. And for many people, their sense of identity is intimately bound up with what they consider to be their problems. which are the things that are missing in my life, or the things that I need to get rid of in my life. It's either one or the other. And those are the problems, things that I need to attract to be fulfilled and happy, or things I need to shed to be fulfilled and happy.
Yes.
And so moving in this mind-made world of problems, that becomes many people's focus of personal identity, me and my problems, I sometimes call it.
Yes.
And so people look at themselves as being a problem that needs to be solved. You mention it in the book, to look at your own life as if it were a problem that requires solution. This is quite an amazing state of consciousness.
Yes. Yes.
And when you can see that, then perhaps the seeing of it is already the beginning of that. You suddenly see, wow, this is what I've been doing with my life. That seeing is already the beginning of awareness coming in.
Yes, it is. It is. For me, what happened with food was that I did stop dieting, and I stopped what I call the war inside myself. I stopped trying to fix myself and really started to understand myself. And that meant, though, and this is part of my question, that meant having a different, relating to my feelings instead of from them and as them. It also meant a kind of inquiry into the many patterns that I had developed in my life. And I was very identified with my past. Yes. And with abuse, because I had experienced a lot of abuse, both physical and sexual abuse. And there was such a strong, as you would call it, pain body. Yeah. That it was very difficult to disengage from that. It wasn't difficult to disengage with that about food for some reason. It wasn't difficult, but I did have to keep going back for many years. And still, I'm doing that to some small degree when I feel like something is very big in the space, or I get, I call it a fundamental loyalty to suffering. That I know who I am because I'm suffering. I know who I am, or I have a friend who says, he wakes up and he says, something's wrong and who's to blame? And I feel like I sort of woke up like that too. Something's wrong and who's to blame? Is it me? Is it somebody else? But somebody needs to be blamed. And that magnet to steel attraction to negativity and to suffering. And for me, there were moments, and this is my question, I'm getting around to it, there were moments where it wasn't just enough to just label it past or pain. I felt as if I needed to do some inquiry into it. Mm-hmm. And then it became thinner and thinner and thinner, and I began to understand that, oh, this is something that happened to me, or anger or sadness or loneliness or boredom isn't what I thought it was. It's not the story I'm telling myself about it, the direct sensate experience of sadness that I still feel. I can tolerate that now. What's that like when I feel that in my body? So I was wondering about that with you, and with what you say about recognizing when you get all caught up in the mind, and then you recognize what's not caught up in the mind. Mm-hmm. It seemed as if for you that awakening happened, that big awakening, when you talk about waking up that next morning. Mm-hmm. I've read that chapter many times. I think it was the introduction to The Power of Now. And it was a different experience. Yes. Of being alive. And it doesn't seem like you needed to go back to explore the whatever it was that had led to the pain you had talked about.
No, that's right. There was a disidentification from mind, from thinking.
Yes.
Also from the emotional field, not repression or anything like that, but just a big space around it.
Yes.
And nevertheless, the integration of the state of presence into, so that it actually goes into, influences everything you do in your life, that took a while. Not to mention even the understanding of it. I had no idea what had happened. I just realized I'm at peace.
Yes.
I didn't know why at all. I couldn't have explained it. So that took several years to really understand that disidentification from thinking. I had no idea that that had happened at that point. I just felt deep peace, and I don't know why.
Right.
And it didn't immediately change everything I did in my life. I continued. It's almost as if the old self, especially in outer doings, had a certain momentum still. So I carried on doing what I was doing already. I was still in the academic world, and I still carried on doing, and then started to work on a PhD without knowing that that wasn't anymore what really was my purpose in life. Was not there at all any longer. But the old movement still had a momentum, and until finally the momentum got close to exhausting itself, and then I came to a point of feeling there was a discrepancy between what I'm doing and my consciousness, who I am, and that led to me walking out of where I was, all the academic world, into nothingness without having a job or money or anything. But I was happy.
Yes, right. Yes.
So and even then I still it wasn't integrated after living for 2 years floating around here and there. Then I thought I'll have to look for a job somewhere. Well, didn't know what to do. I still it wasn't fully in my life, so what can I apply for? I even applied for a job at a bank once. I applied for an academic job because I needed to make a living. And there I realized there was a wise professor one of the several people who interviewed me for the academic job. They asked me questions, and I talked spontaneously. And the old professor must have realized something, because at the end of the interview he asked me, "And what do you really want to do?" And that was to me a big insight. I said, immediately the universe was telling me something through him.
Yes, right.
Yeah.